you guys? Marty Schwartz here with Marty Music, hanging out with my good buddy Jake Baines. And also Jake is a phenomenal guitar player, if you couldn't tell from that intro there. Also one of my favorite guitar players and also fantastic guitar teachers here in Nashville. And he's just straight out of college, pretty much. You grew up in Boston area?
That's right, yep.
When did you start playing guitar?
Man, I think I was 11 or 12, I think. My dad got me into guitar in the first place. He brought me to a guitar store, and I'm a lefty. The guy at the guitar shop made me buy a right-handed guitar, and I didn't think I was going to play. And then I started taking lessons in town, and then my guitar teacher put me onto your videos. And so I was learning what my teacher was teaching me, and then at the same time, I was learning a ton of stuff from your channel.
That's really cool. I don't take any credit for anyone that becomes good at guitar because I know what it takes for someone to get good at guitar, and it's up to them. So congratulations for all the work you put into it, but I'm glad it was my resources.
Hey man, of course, dude.
Yeah. Yeah. I met you originally here in Nashville. You were playing with my great friends, the pitch meeting thing. How would you describe pitch meeting?
Pitch meeting is pitch meeting as what it truly is a nonprofit artist development organization, basically. It's just a big community of musicians that are all trying to be original, authentic, and play their thing, which is fantastic. And what we do on Tuesdays is a give back event, but most people think of, which is called pitch meeting, where we are the live house band, and people sign up and they come and they get up. And we learn their songs on the spot. And sometimes we even write their songs for them on the spot. Yeah. And
I've seen it.
Yeah, it's a riot.
I've been a part of it a lot.
Yeah, you have, man.
I think I was, the first time I sat in with a pitch meeting, you hadn't met them yet. You were like still in school, I think.
Yeah, because I started doing pitch January of this year.
Okay, so now tell me this. You went to Berklee School of Music.
I did, yep.
What's the story of, because it's not just you, it's a lot of other young musicians, the story of graduating or going to Berklee School of Music and then moving to Nashville? That is definitely a thing that is happening now.
Yep, for sure.
Tyler Larson went to Berklee School of Music. Yep. He moved to Nashville. One of the singers in pitch meeting, Emmy, is incredible.
Yep.
She went to Berklee School of Music, moved to Nashville. Is that like a common thread within the students that like, okay, when I graduate, oh yeah, I'm going to Nashville?
Yeah. So interestingly enough, right around the time I was graduating, Nashville became a conversation piece, because forever it's been, are you going to go to New York? Or are you going to go to LA? But those two places have been so moved to, and I guess now Nashville's been a conversation piece. For me, all the types of music that I love so much and all the players that I've admired so much are all down here. Yeah. And so when I graduated, I was like, yeah, I'm going to move down here.
Now you are teaching tons of guitar lessons.
Yep.
Private guitar lessons. Are they mostly through Zoom video, but live?
Most of them are through Zoom, where I've got like a B camera. B camera's on both of my hands. It's well lit. And then I have like a whole system with Google Docs and stuff to keep people informed with how the lessons work. And
do you teach any beginners?
I teach all sorts, and any level pretty much, because at the end of the day, what every person really needs is reinforcement on their core music. And that is where, with every person that I teach, even people that are extremely ripping guitar players, I still find that no matter what ends up happening, if I go in and do an analysis on their core music stuff, their scales, modes, triads, building chords, motivic development, there's still areas that lack inside of that. And if you don't build that out, then anything you add on top of that, this, it's like building a house with a weak foundation for a musician. They're just going to crumble anyway. So no matter what level, that's kind of where everybody winds up starting it.
Cool. I'm just curious myself as a guitar teacher who's taught for a long, long time. I mean, at least 10 years before I was on YouTube, I taught thousands of students, gave thousands of guitar lessons. I was very busy. I can relate to what you're doing now. If someone has never played guitar before, what's like the first thing you teach them?
If somebody's never ever played guitar before, they're completely fresh. My approach is probably just going to be, let's start with a couple of songs. It's just anything to get somebody as engaged as possible with the instrument.
Okay, so what was one of those like popular songs you used to teach a lot or still do?
Man, like, you know, maybe if it's somebody who's on the popular side, some like Ed Sheeran stuff, or maybe it's on the rockier side, maybe I look at like a couple of AC/DC songs.
Yeah.
I mean, where I started, where I actually watched a bunch of your videos on, were AC/DC songs, because they're the best songs I think you can learn.
And you can even do
beginner guitar player.
Some of those with one string. Like even in someone's very first lesson, if they can play something identifiable, it gets them excited.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So what would be the first chord you would teach someone?
Probably a D chord.
Because it's the team captain of chords.
Yeah, no stretching. I find G always finds it being difficult. A is hard because you got to bar stuff. C is huge. D is nice and small. I think D is a good
I knew
start.
Only D for a few years when I was not a guitar player.
Yeah.
Like, because I took some lessons when I was young and the teacher wasn't good for me.
Yeah.
And so I was like, made me think that I didn't have it to play guitar.
Really?
Yeah. For about 5 years.
Well, bad guitar teachers will absolutely
do
rock.
That.
Which is one of the reasons why I'm so interested in teaching.
Me
and
too.
Always have been. Yeah.
When I started teaching, I was like, I'm going to do what I wish that guy would have done with me. On the
Absolutely.
Here I am playing guitar full time.
Right.
And yet I thought that I couldn't play guitar because of the experience. We talked about beginner concepts.
Yeah.
What's the first scale you would teach a student?
I always work on the major scale.
So like this one?
I always do G.
Oh, like
I don't know why I picked G, but I just picked G.
Show me the one you show.
So I always kind of sit with the G major scale and I just talk about why is the major scale important in the first place. And I always kind of reference the fact that G major scale the G major scale is any major scale really is so important because it's the reason why Western music sounds the way it does, right? Because it's just the center of our entire musical universe.
How we make it up.
And all the modes come from that. All of our chords come from that. And it's the same reason as to why when you go to India and play traditional Indian music, or China and play traditional Chinese music, or even Bulgaria, their central scale is something else. And so,
but then the harmony is based off of those
that.
Notes,
yeah, exactly. And so I always think starting with the major scale, but understanding why we know that is important. And I think the problem that most students run into, and I see this with, the majority of my students, I would say, are intermediate to advanced. And even inside of that group, the understanding of why the major scale is important even the modes is so lost. And that is because I think people look at them and go, oh yeah, now that I know the scale, I'm supposed to solo with this scale. But I view every mode as, it's almost like your textbook. Here's all the answers. They just exist inside of this scale. You didn't take a textbook and use every page of it when you had it. You know what I mean? You go to one page or 2 pages and decide, I'm going to take this piece of information out right now, or this piece, right? So when you play the major scale, maybe I'm just going to take 6 and 5. And I'm just going to mess around with just those 2 notes. I'm just going to borrow those 2 notes from the scale. I'm not going to focus on the rest of the scale, just those 2. So yeah, I start with the major scale and I kind of go through, well, how can we use individual pieces of this to create music rather than thinking of, here's our entire scale, let's solo and riff through this scale. Because if you do that, it just sounds like a scale, you know?
Yeah. Okay.
A lot of like interval exploration, I guess. How does this interval relate to you? How does it make you feel? And where do you want it to go? You know, if you play a 4, do you feel it resolve to a 3? Or do you feel 4 go to 5? Like I've had every student has a different answer, and it's so cool because I probably teach this lesson maybe 20 times a month or something, you know what I mean? And whenever I teach it, every student has a different idea and feeling of where one note wants to go. And that's improvising, I think. That's making music. Okay, so one of the things I really enjoy doing is taking ideas and licks that we are so used to playing. For example, the one I'm going to show you right now is we're so used to playing this, right? Just that typical, the classic slide kind of into the fifth here. And if we're talking frets here, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8th fret of the B string, right? And that would be 8th fret of the B string, 9th fret of the G string. This is something we so used to doing. Right? And so what we could do with this idea to change it up, because I'm a really big fan of taking things that are so common in vocabulary between all musicians and changing it, and taking the concept and applying that to other areas, is we can move this, right? So I said 8th fret of the B string, 9th fret of the G string. If we move this down a half step, boom, one set of frets down a half step, and we take these two notes and we bend them both up a half step, we get a bit more of a crunchy kind of sound. And so we can look at that and go, okay, well, it is just a single idea, taking those two notes and banging it up a half step. But what I'm really a big fan of is what's the concept behind the idea? And how can we apply that concept to another part of the fretboard with something else we do? So what I want you to do is think to yourself, where else on the fretboard do I oftentimes play two notes together, whether it's a double stop or a dyad or anything else? And a dyad is just two notes that aren't on the same fret. Think to yourself, where is that? So we got here. How about here? That's kind of cool, you know, just mess around with a whole bunch of different areas. There's a whole bunch of different ones and a whole bunch of different areas. Maybe it's going into major. To get kind of a slide sound. There's an infinite amount of options. It's up to you to kind of find them, but it's just learning that concept and going any two notes, move them down a half step, bend them up to where they should be. You might come up with some really cool ideas that surprise you, and also some ideas that nobody's ever played before, which is pretty exciting. So.
All right. Something else that you can work on doing is kind of coming to terms with the fact that you don't always need a slide to get some of that slide guitar sound. I call it slideless slide. The thing is there's a few people I've seen that kind of come around to this, but everybody sounds different with it because it kind of really depends on how your fingers move. But there are a couple of things that you can do to work on practicing this technique. The first most basic thing that you need to work on in order to get this technique is playing with your fingers with your right hand without a pick.
So the positioning of your hand for that's really important. I do it with a pick sometimes. And in that example, I was doing it with a pick. You'll see me use these middle two fingers, almost like a bass player, and my thumb. Yeah.
I do that too.
Yeah. But if I'm really going for it, I'll put the pick down and I'll really kind of come at the attack with these two fingers here and the thumb. Now, if you're really uncomfortable with that right hand technique, what you can do is just put a metronome on and play your scales with this new technique. So maybe you're going. And so, yeah, you could just work through your scales with just this kind of fingering. All right. Now, that's the first thing you need to work on, is just getting comfortable with using your fingers to pick notes, because you get a lot more of an expressive sound. And when you play slide, it's such an expressive instrument on its own, I think, that we really want to aim to replicate that when it comes to using our fingers and replicating the slide sound. The next thing that really, I think, really scopes out the sound of a slide is how we approach notes. And so what you can work on is, I see a lot of people slide trying to do this, and they'll start with one fret and slide into the next fret. But when you do that, it sounds like a guitar with, the way we usually play it. Fretted guitar. Yeah, exactly. What you can do is practice before you pick anything, just slide up the fretboard like this on one string. But as you get closer to the 12th fret, start applying more pressure. Your aim is to get to the 12th fret of the B string, and that's the note that you're going to play.
So we're in G blues right now, or no?
Or just, I'm just giving the example.
Oh, just the note.
Just the note B.
Okay.
Yeah. And you're going to practice finding the spot where the second you're pressing down hard enough, you're starting to get a sound out of it. Hear how it's really unclear as to where the note starts, but it's very clear as to where the note ends. So you just want to practice that. Maybe this is another area you get a metronome going. Whoop, whoop, whoop. And you can practice this on all different strings and all different notes. And then you can work on sliding into it and getting the bend going. For example, if we were to move it back to G, here's the note G. One of the things that you saw me play in that solo is I slid into that note, but once I got to that note, I then bent the note. I never end the bend either, because with slide players, they don't always bend and then end the note there. So it's like I'm trying to create an ambiguous ending. So all in, as a recap, you want to practice, that slide and grabbing that note at the top with the finger style thing, as well as getting the bend at the top of it and being really light with your touch. I would say that's a great way to start working on this slideless slide sound. So a lot of you guys probably already do this pentatonic exercise. And this exercise is where you would set a metronome to a specific speed, and you're going to play groupings of 4. The click is going to click, and you're going to play 16th notes to the click. And what that means is it's going to go click, 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 click. So every click, there's 4 notes following it, right? We're going to play our pentatonic scale, our minor pentatonic scale, with this patterning, right? So it'd be starting on the first note and playing 4 with this one included. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Start with your next note and play 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Next note, 1, 2, 3, 4. Next note, 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, so all in so far, you've got a click going at a speed that you're comfortable with, and you're gonna do the pentatonic scale in groupings of 4, minor pentatonic. I'm doing the key of G. Now, while you're doing this, it's really important to make sure that you are alternate picking. So, in order to make sure you're doing this, video yourself. Videoing yourself is extremely helpful because if you video yourself, you're going to see, oh, I did some double downstrokes here, or 2 upstrokes here. That's not something you necessarily want to have. It's also really important to make sure that the metronome speed at which you're doing this at is not too fast and that you are not making consistent mistakes. I always like to think about, I used to be really into like psychology, and there's the process of classical conditioning where you use rewards to get a desired behavior. The thing I always think about when we practice guitar is the whole time we're getting rewards. So anytime you practice a bad habit or make a lot of consistent mistakes while you're practicing, your brain is like, cool, man, I'll do that again. So practicing at a slow enough speed at which you are getting this consistently accurate and the right touch and the right sound is very important, right? I would say. Now, if you find yourself yeah, perfect, yeah. So be like a... And I double that last one. There's one very helpful practice tip that I will give out, and that is if you videotape yourself and you watch the video and you find that there's an area that you make a mistake consistently, use a practice method called isolation. I'm sure this probably has another practice name, but I've been teaching so long at this point that I'm just making up terms. So good. I call it isolation. Mm-hmm. And what that is if you're making a mistake, anytime you make a mistake that's absolutely a mistake and not just, oh, my fingers tripped over each other, stop what you're doing, isolate that exact area, and make sure that you have it done correct before you go back to doing the whole exercise. So just as an example, you want to give me that metronome again? I'm going to make a mistake. So it'll be like, oh yeah. And you're like constantly making a mistake on that A and D string. So that's going to be an area where I slow it way down. I dry run it first without the metronome. I get a feel for it. I look at my fingers to make sure I know why I'm making the mistake. And now I have it at a point where I feel comfortable with it, and then I go back to the metronome and back to do the whole exercise. And that's isolation. And you can do that with anything. Anytime you're bending, anytime you play a lick, an idea, a chord, and you make a mistake, you should always isolate that and improve it.
Awesome, man. That was great stuff. Thanks, Jake, again. And we'll be working together hopefully for a long time. You guys can find out more about Jake in the links below. Also, actually, I'd love to hear from you guys about learning some more from Jake, maybe guesting on the channel here too, just to keep showing stuff. I mean, I think you're really good at teaching. You just are fresh out of like the best music school. And then you're also a professional out there gigging too. So you've kind of got all the tools. You're not jaded. Like, it's all really good stuff. And I think you can teach people a lot. Thanks again, buddy.
Hey, thank you.
Yeah, of course, man. Of course. And thanks for watching, everyone. More videos to come. We'll see you again.
Take it easy.